Good morning, folks. This is Alexander A. Manzoni with a new episode of Manzoni in the Morning. Today, we're in scenic Browns Edition, Spokane.
No, we're not.
Oh,
We're in Vinegar Flats.
oh, okay. That's better than Browns Edition, right?
Well, I don't know about better. I would say a little more diverse.
Ooh, that sounds cool. I really like it out here. This is where the cool artists go in Spokane, obviously.
Don't tell anybody. It's our little secret.
I'm here with my special guest, poet Dennis Held. He is an illustrious figure in the Spokane scene, a legend, if you will. I am so glad that he invited me to come here and record an episode of this podcast. Oh, yeah. How you doing today?
So far, so good. Thank you.
I promise not to ask you any gotcha questions because I'm always watching interviews where they're interviewing people, and I'm always like, oh, that was way out of bounds. No, they don't want to talk about that. Come on. We're talking about poetry. We're talking about, whatever's going on in our lives and in the city. Obviously, we are not going to know too much about what's going on in the streets because we're doing what we're supposed to do. We're staying home for the quarantine. Boom. So today I've got a bunch of New Year's poems that I'd like to read, and I'm sure Dennis has some poetry he would like to read too. So I'm going to start it off with Countdown to 2021, and then I'll go to you, Dennis.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. It's the countdown to 2021, and what a lousy year it has been for most of the human race, but not if you're a billionaire. What a year it was. We sat home the entire time, confused, weakened under an onslaught of advertising, subliminal and non, while increasingly desperate and out-of-touch celebrities hawked cheap foreign products, cruelty-free makeup tested on humans, not animals, over YouTube, Instagram, shitbook, TikTok. What a crock of shit that is. How thankful I am that this state of 2020 'twas temporary, despite how it seemed that it would go on forever and ever. 2020 for every year afterwards till the eventual end of time. Election 2020, Breonna Taylor, police brutality, COVID-19, not even at 20 yet, apparently. Let us rejoice as we enter a new era, a new moment in time. Let us not forget the lessons we learned, willingly or forced, as we retire to our winter-bound homes for one last taste of the 20. Let us live our own lives the way we wish. White privilege be damned. There will be no stocking up on fireworks this year. 2020, it doth not deserve it. Let it go out with a whimper. Let this sickening wheezing coming from the basement closet be the one last lingering moment we must tolerate you. Go fuck yourself, 2020. Get the fuck out of here and let us never speak of thee again. I didn't even listen to my own poem because I'm going to speak of 2020 in the next poem. But before I do, Dennis, will you read us a poem, if you would so enjoy?
Well, funny you should ask. I didn't bring any paper down here with me, so I'll have to recite a poem for you.
That's because you're an expert. You know all that shit. You're the
I
best.
don't know all no shit. Thank you, by the way, for your kind words. There are many others who deserve the sobriquet of legend way ahead of me. I just might mention a couple, like Tom I. Davis. Tom Davis lived here in Spokane during the 80s and 90s at a time when it wasn't so easy being a poet in Spokane. And so, I stand on the shoulders. If I stand on any shoulders, I stand on the shoulders of giants. And some of those folks have paved the way for the acceptance of poetry, not just acceptance, but the delight in poetry and the huge rise in poetry culture in Spokane. All I'd have to say to anybody else in any major city in the country is, hey, we have a poetry series here that ran every single Wednesday for more than 6 years. Every single Wednesday, think about that. That's more than 300 episodes of a poetry reading over a course of a long. It just is a testament to where Spokane stands in terms of its take on poetry. So let's see. Here's a poem. This is a poem. It was the first poem that was published in Poetry Magazine. It was sort of the target. If you're a poet, you'd really like to land a poem there. And this poem was in Poetry Magazine while I was still in graduate school. And it has a little backstory that the teacher of the class I was in at the time told me that the poem was actually an insult to the original author of the poem that it was meant to be an homage to, and that was Wallace Stevens. And I wrote what I thought was an homage to Wallace Stevens' poem Sunday Morning. And I sent it into Poetry Magazine, and lo and behold, within a couple of weeks, it was accepted. And so take that, Patricia Gotica. You were wrong. I was right. Okay. Here's a poem, and it's called Reuben, who was my dad, who very few times in his life was he even humane, but one of those times would be Sunday mornings after church. We'd all be back at the house, and he would start cooking up some weird, liver sausage and onions and something, and suddenly it felt good to be in the house. So this is Reuben, Sunday Morning, 1967.
Ooh.
Complacencies of the PJs and late instant Folgers, and fried liver sausage on the sofa, and the green and gold of the Green Bay Packers swirl and sweep to remove the unholy husk of weekday work and hustle. He listens to Stan Kenton and P.J. Hunt while the horn blues up the living room. The smell of the liver and the sweet, clear notes seem things singular, declaring themselves alive, skimming lightly across untested waters. And the day here unwinds like a funeral procession that has no corpse, on thick ice, alive for the dream of the deep pool below.
Wow. I love your poetry. It's like a smorgasbord of literary flavors, because it's so visceral for me. Like, I feel it, like, just the way I process it when I'm hearing it. It brings forth all these fantastical images, and it makes me feel like I'm at home. And thank you for that poem. That was fantastic.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you for those kind words.
Man.
That was in my first book, which was called Betting on the Night. And that book is available by ordering it from Abe Books, and that's abebooks.com, which, if you haven't checked it out, it's a great website for used books. It's got most of the independent bookstores in America have books listed on it. And so your Abe Books itself gets a little cut, which is owned by eBay, but at least the bookstore gets a piece and sells a book. And so I always order through them if I can. And then there's two other books. I have the most recent one is called Not Me Exactly. And it's from one of the poems in the book, in which I mention that sometimes when a man, specifically a man, is walking down the street, and there's a woman walking down the street toward him, she'll cross the street, or she'll switch her purse to the other side. And that's because in her experience, you know, she has been hassled. She has been, you know, accosted by someone who is a man. Not me exactly, but a man, you know, and that's where the title from that book comes from. And I think men have a lot to atone for. And, one thing about, and we'll send it back to your next poem here in a minute, but one thing about this COVID thing and the simultaneous outbreak of attention on social justice, you mentioned Breonna Taylor in that poem, the simultaneous attention on the Me Too movement, on sexual harassment, sexual assault. A number of major forces have been thrust into American consciousness that have been dawdling along below consciousness for a long time, way too long. And I include myself in this. Sports, NCAA sports is one such just corrupt institution, And so some of this corruption is being forced out into the open. And, it's being reckoned with in some ways. And so, through the poetry, if nothing else, I think that there's some good being done.
That's very insightful. I agree. And everyone's been inside. They're getting more informed than ever on all these injustices and these ridiculous news stories and things. Yes, men do have a lot to atone for. My mother raised me on that principle because she was a victim of domestic violence. And it's just ridiculous, like what she has to go through trying to find a date through Match.com. And just 99% of the men that come through there are just, grab, or they want to be like, ooh, my first date. We better have sex or I'm never speaking to you again. It's like, come on, what are you doing to my mother? And, it has really led me to reflect on the misgivings of masculinity and has given me purpose to amend some of it, at least partially, by bringing attention to it through the written word and through actions, because what good are words if your actions are signify that you're a fucked up motherfucker, But it's been so weird doing all this stuff, being at home all year with all this stuff coming up online, doom, and people wanting to go protesting more than ever, and it was, super dangerous. Like over the year, I used to go to a lot of protests, and then this year I decided not to, and it was kind of good because one of the last ones they had around here, some of the people on my Facebook friends got shot with rubber bullets and tear gas. So I realized that I'm probably better off writing about this stuff. And I think some other people are too, instead of I don't know. People need to go out and streets if there's an injustice. But at the same time, sometimes it ends up making it worse because we have all these counter protesters that are literally going out simply to pick a fight with people. And after having encountered the Proud Boys at the Mike Pence protest a couple years ago, I had a little taste of that, and I didn't want another one. So I've done everything I could to avoid them, and that's when I get pulled into some Facebook comment disputes where they were like, you weren't at that protest, and they're like, oh, you snowflake, and I'm like, nope, I'm not going to feed into this, because that's what they want to do. You have all these people that don't want to listen, and they're not going to hear you because they've already made up their mind. And honestly, I've made up my mind too. I don't think there's a Republican that could come in here and give me tell me something and I'll be like, oh, yes, I think we should build a wall. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, that sounds like a great idea. Oh, let's give another tax break to the rich. Got a car pulling up over here. No big deal.
Well, if I could say something, I might mention that leader of the Proud Boys, was arrested, landing in Washington, D.C. He was arrested on a charge of burning a flag in front of a church. But when they arrested him, they found he had 2 magazines of weaponry on him, which were illegal for him to have as a felon. And so, sorry, buddy, you're in jail, and I hope you stay there.
I mean, those guys are trying to tell me that they're a nonviolent group.
Oh, that's BS. They
Yeah.
know that's not true.
I had guys running up in my face. They're like, literally, their tongue, like their lips are almost touching my face. They're spitting it.
Yeah.
Like, make America great again.
Yeah.
And we were just like, just it was the day we were with the big Trump baby balloon. And I was just holding on to it. I'm like, I'm not letting go of this. And it come up, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to punch you in the face. It took me 6 years to get off probation for my drug charges. So, no, I'm not going to do that.
Nobody should hit anybody. Let's just
No.
Weren't you going to read a poem here?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you. This is the first poem I wrote for the new year. First words of the new year. May I look back upon this in another year's time with a spirited fondness and warmth. May my family find itself prosperous. May all of our most pertinent dreams be realized. And may our hopes be not denied. May there be an edifying meaning behind each moment of pain, each moment of loss, of hardship. We scaled the top of the 2020 mountain only to find another 2021 looming before us. Can we trust the predetermined paths, or must we forge our own? Will we be alone, or will we be together on 12/31/21? Oh, very good. I'm going to go into the next poem. We're going to go take in... okay, no problem. So I'm going to go back to this poem I wrote. I'm going to do this one I did New Year's Eve. It's called One Last Gasp from 2020. One last gasp from 2020. One last lingering agony felt from within. Only 13 minutes left in this godforsaken year. Be done with you. Let us only speak of you in hushed tones. Let you die alone, and let us rejoice. That's right. And we're going to go back in time to 12/31/2014. Wow. Today was the last day of the year 2014. It was a great year for change. It was a seemingly endless summer, so endless. Endless after Mother and the dog left. They left when the old house was sold, and the state of New Jersey would not allow me to go with them because I was on probation. And I didn't get off of that. A 3-year sentence turned into 6 years of shit until the end of September. It was an exciting year, a bipolar year. It was a painful year, a year of growth and ultimate transition. Moving by rail from one coast to another, saying goodbye to the old gang back home. To Jay, the liquor store man, to Barnesy, to Dom, to Jimmy and Joker, to my father, to my cousins, my enemies, and everyone else. Sure glad that this year is over. Well, 2014 was a very momentous year for me. That was when I moved out of New Jersey. And, honestly, every year after that's been better. Even though, like, this past couple years have been rough as hell. But for entirely different reasons than they were before. Excuse me. All right. It's really cool to go back to these old poems and look at them and be like, oh, shit. That makes sense. Well, I remember how I felt then. I'm going to go 2017. It is the final Friday night of 2017, and I am laying here in bed, reflecting, thinking about the events of the year. I am pondering. I grow tired of arising to refill the draught of whiskey. Streaming dreams on the screen, half a foot of snow hath fallen to the ground since daybreak. I have been outside but twice, shoveling white muck from a third-story balcony porch. It is thrown off the ledge without looking, not that I can see where it is landing. While snow turns to dust, cobwebs, hail, sodden, slick surface slipping by the ledge. The new year bringeth new fears, new apprehensions. What will happen next? Will we fall and break our necks? I lean back over the edge, orange plastic shovel dangling precariously. The whipping wind, it whispers to me, so low, so subtly speaking. What are you doing so close to the ledge? Why don't you stop and take a breath? And I didn't know what that meant, though knew enough not to relent to the requests of the elements, however prolific, however specific. Carry me inside, whereupon I shall then kindle fires of the mind. Writing, I am fighting the demons inside on the final Friday night of 2017. A sight unseen, I come from behind and kiss Sophia upon her chair. Upon her lips I miss and kiss her glasses, leaving behind moist lip print cameos. What will we know by this time in 2018? Who will be left standing? Who will go mad, sucked through and into the maelstrom of irrevocable night and unthinkable anguish? Who will we be on 12/31/18? What life will life still mean anything? What will our fates of the new days be? Will we continue to dream? Final Friday night of 2017, and I am laying here in bed. I am writing all the words that cometh to me, because I try as I might, I cannot run from these thoughts. So perhaps it is best I do get them all down as much as I can. After all, the call to write, it is powerful. You know, I thought 2017 was a tough year, but it didn't have nothing compared like this last year, man. But as I was saying, you know, it's just every year has been difficult for different reasons, whether it be my own drug addiction, whether it be my mental illness, whether it be COVID, whether it be a tyrannical president or anything else, you know, riots in the streets or whatever. It's rough. The going is tough, but we still must continue onward. Ah, Dennis, you're back. Excellent. Oh, yes, that's great. I was just going to ask you if you had any more for us.
In fact, I do. I'll even sit here in front of your little camera. And I also have some chicken legs.
Oh, very nice.
That we'll cook up here after we're done with our little deal, which will be shortly, I believe.
Oh, very good.
Okay. All right, you.
Ah, there they are.
So, you looking at me, camera? It's just showing MacBook Pro on there.
Oh, it's
there
it's still recording.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's that book. You could go to Auntie's Bookstore. You could buy that. It's called Ourself. See that plant on the front there, that weed? Oh, that's what's shooting it?
Oh, they're all shooting.
Woo! Hi there. I'm back. This is a poem from our book Ourself here, which I've been showing you but not speaking into the microphone about. The plant on the front is a teasel. This poem's called The Wasp, and it's set actually down in Peaceful Valley where there's some grapes that were growing over the roadway and kind of hanging down over the windshield. And so the speaker of this poem is sort of looking at this set of grapes and this wasp. And it's called The Wasp, and it wonders, why does he have to wind up on my dashboard, barely strong enough to hover, much less pose any kind of threat, its black striped stinger pulsing like a lover? And why am I so sure it's a he, impotent little death dealer? In my beat-down car, we're stuck together, dying insect, feeble, humped against the glass, starved for one sip of the holy grape that droops just beyond the veil, succulent cluster gone overripe and unpicked, wasted fruits, lost opportunities, and the stray disaster just one windshield away. But stiffly, the window's driver's side rolls down, and stumbling, off we go. So that's a poem that's actually, you can, I don't know if you can see, but it's in kind of a box. It's a 14-line poem, has about 10 syllables. It's a sonnet, kind of a sonnet-like poem in that it's not entirely hard rhymed on the ends, although the couplet, the last two lines at the end, are hard rhymed, window and off we go. But that's kind of an interesting little slant rhyme, really. It's not self-evident, I would say.
I'm going to ask you, this makes me look kind of stupid, but
yeah.
What exactly is a sonnet?
Pardon me?
What exactly is a sonnet?
Oh, well, no, it doesn't make you stupid at all. We've all got opportunities to learn. We hear these terms kind of kicked around, and we're like, Iambic Pentameter. I know
That's another one.
I've heard that 1,000 times, but what exactly does Iambic Pentameter mean? Well, it's a major element of a sonnet, so let's start there. Iambic refers to the beat, the rhythm. Like, this is what rappers are all about. This, hunting down a distinctive rhythm. So an I am, and this is all kind of based on Greek ideas about poetry, going way back to where the accent fell. And in Greek poetry especially, there were certain patterns that the language fell into naturally anyway, just like English. And so Iambic pentameter refers to iamb is a beat that is an unaccented syllable and then an accented syllable. It's just that simple. That's one iamb. If you stretch 5 of those iambs in a row, ba-ba, 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 you've iambic pentameter. Penta meaning 5, right? Like the Pentagon, all right? So, say you do that. But then some mornings I awake, so proud of my divinity, I feel my horns can scoop the disappearing moon and hold it where I please. That builds a certain tension, right? It builds a certain sense of majesty almost. Now that poem is a poem from the first book. It's called A God's Song, Shamir Pet, India. And this is based on a story that a friend told me about being in India, and there was only one marketplace in this little town, and the Muslims occupied it part of the day, and the Hindus occupied it part of the day. And the Hindus revered cattle, and the Muslims did not. They had butcher shops. And so, it's like, whoa, the poor cow. What's the cow think? Well, I finally got around to wondering that question. And so I put the poem in that voice, and it relies at first on this iambic pentameter, and then it breaks up. The rhythm changes. It goes like that. And then at the end, it recovers. ba 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 ba. And so the implication is that this god, this cow, kind of freaks out and, kind of gets it back. So here it is, a God song, Shamirpet, India. But then some mornings I awake, so proud of my divinity, I feel my horns can scoop the disappearing moon and hold it where I please. And when the mortals mark their foreheads with the ashes of my dung, I know what comfort my existence lends to lives of dust and hunger. And when I walk among them, all bow low. No hand is raised to hurry my slow passage. But when the infidels clamor through the marketplace, my head hangs low, my nostrils in the dust. They curse my name, they lash me with sticks. They say my flesh could steal from death 1,000 hungry widows. They say I feed on the grain of starving children. They want me gone, but I am not moved.
Yeah.
So there's a portrait of an unfeeling God, an unforgiving God. I don't know. Most Christian conceptions of God, to me, represent a pretty unfeeling God, a way of being in the world that isn't very charitable, smiting here and smiting there and smiting everywhere, and chosen people over the other people and all of that. So I don't say that the Hindus or the Muslims or the Christians or the Jews or any one religion have a very good take, much less the take, on what spirituality is encompassed by or encompasses. I think the closer we get to putting a human-like face on that force that certainly has a natural origin, through the natural world, the force of connectedness of all the plants and animals and humanity and all that has to have some bearing on spirituality. I don't see how it can't. We from dust we come, and to dust we shall go. So, in my opinion, anyway, we have to find other ways of being in the world that are good to each other. I'll read a poem from my last book here, my most recent book called Not Me Exactly. It too has a beautiful cover. It's a photograph of a datura plant taken by my friend, there we go, Sean Cassidy, who teaches down at Lewiston, Idaho, or did. He just retired. And so this specifically has some poems that are Spokane related. Here's one called Spokane Girlfriend. Spokane is my girlfriend, and she spits and belches and farts and says motherfucker in a way that insults both mothers and fuckers. But she never says she's sorry or calls me honey anymore, and she needs a hot bath, and she eats crappy fast food and smokes rolled up swag leaf all day and drives a rusted out 84 Datsun pickup with no spare tire, and she calls me drunk at 3 a.m. saying, baby, come over, I need a big piece of you, and I say, no way, and she says, honey, I am so sorry, and so what can I do but get up and go see Spokane?
That's great.
Oh, thank you. Spokane is my girlfriend. Here's one about being surprised by stuff when you're a little kid. It's called sans, meaning without, of course, in French. Sans teeth. They should warn kids about this shit. One day you're sitting there, 4 years old, and suddenly somebody's grandma, maybe your own, unself-consciously reaches into her mouth and pulls out the inside of her face and calmly stares it down like a stranger in the house with lips collapsed, then pops the skeletal grin back in, restored among the native tongue and tonsils. And nobody says a thing? What's next? Will Mom pull the spine out of her back someday and give it a good hard shake? Wouldn't be any more surprising than a dead-looking grandma sitting at the table and trying to smile at me.
That's great.
There you go. There's one of those. So I thank you for joining me in my garage today, where it's getting a little chilly.
My pleasure.
I'm going to put some chicken on the grill, and we're going to have a little chicken to finish off our little session here.
That sounds great.
You eat, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
I thought you might. So thank you for joining me, Dennis Held, down here with Alexander in the morning, and look forward to talking to you another time.
All right. Thanks for having me. It is a pleasure to work with you, Dennis. You are one of the best poets this town has ever had, or ever will have, I believe. And just knowing you inspires me in a way that I don't think I have felt since I was like in school before I started really fucking up. That had like a really good teacher, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, you're doing some." They would look at my my writing, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're really doing some good shit." And then, I would just had like that connection. But then after I moved to Spokane, I stopped running into them because, of course, I wasn't going to see my history teacher at the mall anymore. But I've had to take everything I've learned and move forward. And that's why I'm going to keep writing, and I'm going to keep doing this podcast. And it is a glorious day. Thank you. This is Manzoni in the morning. Signing off. Thank you very much.